The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps as Maya Rodriguez pushed her cleaning cart past the massive CNC machine that had brought Titan Aerospace to its knees. Steam hissed from broken hydraulic lines, and the acrid smell of overheated metal filled the air. In the corner, 12 of the company's best engineers huddled around laptops, their faces pale with the kind of panic that comes when a single machine failure threatens to cost millions. "We've tried everything," Dr. Sarachin whispered into her phone, her voice cracking. "The hydraulic pressure keeps spiking, but we can't find the source. We're looking at a complete production shutdown." Maya paused, her dark eyes studying the machine's rhythmic shudder. She'd seen that particular tremor before, in her father's garage when customers brought in cars with transmission problems. But she was just the cleaning girl, the mechanic's daughter who emptied trash cans and mopped floors while brilliant minds with engineering degrees struggled with problems she could solve in her sleep. Her fingers tightened around the mop handle. Should she say something? The last time she'd spoken up 6 months ago, the assistant manager had laughed so hard he'd nearly choked on his coffee. "Stick to what you know, sweetheart," he'd said, patting her on the head like a child. Maya was 22 years old. She held a high school diploma and worked part-time at minimum wage while taking night classes at the community college. On paper, she was nobody. But in the grease-stained garage below the apartment she shared with her father, she was something else entirely. "Maya Mija, come help me with this transmission," her father would call when she was 12, his weathered hands already deep in the belly of a broken Ford. "Tell me what you see." What she saw was poetry in motion, gears that sang when properly aligned, pistons that danced in perfect rhythm, systems that spoke a language older than words. While other kids played video games, Maya learned to listen to engines breathe, to feel vibrations that told stories of wear and stress and impending failure. "The machine doesn't lie," Papa would say, his accent thick with the wisdom of 40 years under hoods and inside engines. "She tells you everything if you know how to listen." Now, at Titan Aerospace, Maya listened. She heard the machine's distress in frequencies the engineers couldn't detect, saw patterns in the hydraulic system's behavior that their computer models missed. She understood the language that formal education had somehow forgotten to teach. The main production floor stretched out like an aircraft hangar, filled with million-dollar machines that carved precision parts for commercial jets. Maya had been cleaning here for 8 months, invisible to everyone except the security guard who checked her ID each morning. She knew every machine's personality, every sound that meant trouble, every vibration that warned of impending disaster. But she was just Maria Rodriguez's daughter, the girl who smelled like motor oil and spoke with her father's accent when she got nervous. The girl who wore second-hand clothes and rode the bus 40 minutes each way because she couldn't afford a car that worked reliably. The girl who dreamed of engineering school but couldn't afford the tuition, who studied calculus textbooks from the library while scrubbing floors that brilliant minds walked across without seeing her. "Status report." The voice cut through the ambient noise like a blade. James Thompson, lead systems engineer, strode across the floor with the confidence of a man who'd never been wrong about anything important. His gray suit was immaculate, his MIT class ring catching the harsh lights as he gestured at the broken machine. Thompson was 53 years old, with 28 years of experience and a corner office that overlooked the employee parking lot. He drove a Tesla and lived in the kind of neighborhood where Maya's father did oil changes for the housekeepers. To Thompson, Maya was part of the scenery, useful for emptying his trash can, invisible for everything else. "We've run every diagnostic," Chin reported, her tablet displaying cascading data that meant nothing to most people but everything to engineers. "Pressure spikes occur every 14 minutes, but the timing isn't consistent with any mechanical or pattern we can identify." Thompson frowned, his thick eyebrows knitting together as he studied the machine. Around him, his team of engineers, all with advanced degrees, all with years of experience, all making salaries that Maya couldn't imagine, waited for his verdict. "Run the thermal imaging again," he commanded. "Check every valve, every seal, every connection. There has to be something we're missing." Maya continued mopping, her movements automatic while her mind processed what she'd overheard. Pressure spikes every 14 minutes, but irregular timing. She'd heard that pattern before, felt it in the frame of her father's garage when Mrs. Peterson's Honda developed a transmission leak that stumped 3 mechanics. The solution had been embarrassingly simple. "Excuse me." Maya's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried across the space between worlds, between the educated and the experienced, between those who belonged and those who merely served. Thompson didn't even look up. Maintenance requests go through facilities management, he said dismissively, waving a hand in her general direction. We're dealing with a critical situation here. I think I know what's wrong with your machine. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Chen looked up from her tablet, surprise flickering across her face. Thompson slowly turned, his expression shifting from irritation to disbelief to something approaching amusement. You think you know? His voice carried the particular condescension reserved for those who didn't understand their place. This is a $3 million precision manufacturing system. We have 12 engineers with a combined 80 years of experience trying to solve this problem. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she held her ground. Around the broken machine, the other engineers had stopped working to watch the exchange. She could feel their stares like physical weight, could practically hear their thoughts. Who does this cleaning girl think she is? I know it sounds crazy, Maya said, her father's accent creeping into her voice the way it always did when she was nervous. But I've seen this pattern before. The pressure spikes, the irregular timing, it's not mechanical failure. Then what is it? Thompson's question was a trap, designed to expose her ignorance and restore the natural order of things. Maya took a breath, remembering her father's hands guiding hers to feel the subtle vibration that revealed the truth. It's resonance feedback. Your hydraulic system is fighting against itself because the pressure relief valve is opening and closing in response to vibrations from the floor. Every time someone walks by, every time the overhead crane moves, it triggers a micro-adjustment that compounds into system failure. The silence that followed was deafening. Chen's fingers flew across her tablet, pulling up sensor data that nobody had thought to correlate with foot traffic and crane movements. The numbers began to align in ways that made seasoned engineers question everything they thought they knew. That's... Chen's voice trailed off as the data painted a picture that was both simple and sophisticated. That's actually brilliant. We were looking for mechanical failure when we should have been looking at environmental factors. Thompson's face cycled through emotions like a broken traffic light, red with embarrassment, yellow with uncertainty, finally settling on green acknowledgement that burned him from the inside. How did you know that? My father taught me to listen, Maya said simply. Machines tell you everything if you pay attention. But most people are too busy thinking to hear what they're saying. The revelation rippled through the engineering team like an earthquake. Dr. Kumar, the senior hydraulics specialist, was already on his phone with the manufacturer, explaining the environmental sensitivity that their sophisticated computer models had somehow missed. Thompson stood frozen, watching a 22-year-old cleaning woman explain fluid dynamics principles that his team had overlooked. The fix is simple, Maya continued, gaining confidence as she saw understanding dawn in their faces. You need to isolate the pressure relief valve from environmental vibrations. A dampening collar around the mounting bracket should do it. Maybe $20 in parts. $20 to solve a $3 million crisis. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. But Maya's moment of triumph was interrupted by the sound of expensive shoes on concrete. Marcus Webb, Titan's chief operating officer, approached with the measured gait of a man whose time was worth more per minute than Maya made in a week. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his navy suit pressed to military precision. Thompson, Webb's voice carried the weight of corporate authority. I just got off the phone with Boeing. They need their parts by Friday or we lose the contract. $27 million. Gone. Tell me you have solutions. Thompson's jaw worked silently, caught between his pride and the undeniable reality that the cleaning woman had just solved his unsolvable problem. Around him, his team busied themselves with tablets and laptops, suddenly fascinated by data they'd been staring at for hours. Sir, Thompson began, his voice carefully neutral, we've identified the issue. Environmental resonance feedback causing hydraulic pressure instability. We're implementing a solution now. Webb's eyes swept the assembled engineers, taking in their guilty expressions and averted gazes. How long? 30 minutes for the fix, another hour for testing, Chen reported, her voice steadier now that they had a path forward. Webb nodded curtly and turned to leave, then paused. His gaze fell on Maya, still standing beside her cleaning cart with motor oil under her fingernails and hope in her eyes. You look familiar, he said, studying her face. Have we met? Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it, the moment when her unauthorized involvement would be discovered, when she'd be fired for overstepping boundaries she was never supposed to cross. No, sir, she managed. I just clean here. Webb's eyes narrowed slightly, the expression of a man who'd built an aerospace company by noticing details others missed. But he simply nodded and walked away, leaving Maya to wonder if she dodged a bullet or stepped into a trap. The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of activity. Maintenance workers installed the dampening collar that Maya had suggested, their rough hands following instructions that came from engineers who'd learned humility in the span of a conversation. Maya watched from the sidelines, still invisible but no longer powerless. When they fired up the machine for the test run, the silence was profound. No pressure spikes. No irregular hydraulic behavior. Just the smooth rhythmic operation of a $3 million system that purred like her father's best engine rebuild. Thompson stood beside the control panel, his face a mask of professional composure that barely concealed the revolution happening inside his head. Everything he believed about expertise and education, and who deserved to be heard, had just been challenged by a woman who learned engineering in her father's garage. The solution is holding, Chen announced, her voice carrying relief and something else, respect. All systems nominal. Around the machine, engineers began to pack their equipment with the subdued efficiency of a defeated army. But Chen lingered, approaching Maya with cautious curiosity. "Where did you learn about resonance feedback?" she asked quietly. Maya glanced around, making sure Thompson wasn't listening. "My father fixes cars. Transmission problems often look mechanical when they're actually environmental. A loose exhaust mount can cause pressure issues that seem completely unrelated." "That's..." Chen paused, choosing her words carefully. "That's exactly the kind of systems thinking we teach in graduate school. How long have you been working on machines?" "Since I was old enough to hold a wrench." Maya's smile was sad and proud at the same time. "But apparently that doesn't count for much around here." Chen was quiet for a long moment, watching the machine run with a smooth precision that had eluded them for 3 days. "It should count for everything," she said finally. As the engineering team dispersed, Maya returned to her cleaning routine, but something had shifted in the fabric of her world. For 20 minutes, she hadn't been invisible. For 20 minutes, her knowledge had mattered more than her background or her bank account or the oil stains on her clothes. That evening, Maya sat in her father's garage, the familiar smell of motor oil and metal shavings wrapping around her like a warm blanket. Luis Rodriguez looked up from the engine he was rebuilding, his weathered face creased with the satisfaction of a man who'd spent 43 years making broken things run again. "How was work today, Mija?" Maya told him about the machine, about the engineers, about the moment when her voice had mattered. Luis listened without interruption, his dark eyes reflecting pride and something deeper, the recognition of a dream deferred but not destroyed. "Your mother would be proud," he said quietly. Elena Rodriguez had died when Maya was 15, but her memory lived in every lesson about perseverance, every reminder that worth wasn't measured in degrees or paychecks but in the courage to use your gifts, regardless of who was watching. "Papa, do you think I'm crazy for believing I could be an engineer?" Luis set down his wrench and looked at his daughter with the intensity of a man who'd fought for every opportunity life had given him. "Mija, you already are an engineer. The only difference between you and them is a piece of paper that costs too much money." But Maya knew it was more complicated than that. In a world where credentials mattered more than capability, where network connections opened more doors than natural talent, being right wasn't enough. You had to be heard. You had to be seen. You had to belong. The next morning brought gray skies and the familiar routine of bus rides and security checkpoints and invisible labor. Maya arrived at Titan Aerospace expecting everything to return to normal, engineers in their offices, machines running smoothly, cleaning woman back in her proper place. Instead, she found Dr. Chun waiting by her locker. "Maya, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Maya's stomach clenched. This was it, the moment when someone in authority would tell her to keep her opinions to herself, to remember her place, to stop pretending she belonged in conversations above her station. "Yesterday," Chin continued, "you diagnosed a problem that stumped our entire team. That wasn't luck. That wasn't coincidence. That was expertise." Maya said nothing, unsure whether this was praise or accusation. "I looked into your background," Chin said gently. "High school valedictorian. Perfect SAT scores in mathematics. You applied to MIT, Caltech, Stanford, and got accepted to all 3. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Those acceptance letters, yellowed now with age, still sat in a box under her bed alongside scholarship applications that had fallen just short of covering full tuition. Dreams that had withered under the weight of financial reality. Why didn't you go? Chen's question was soft but relentless. Because accepting meant leaving my father alone when he needed me most. Because partial scholarships still meant debt I couldn't afford. Because working 2 jobs to pay for community college was hard enough without adding the pressure of competing with kids who'd never worried about rent money. The truth hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. What if I told you that could change? Before Maya could respond, Thompson's voice echoed across the production floor. Rodriguez. My office. Now. Maya's blood turned to ice water. She'd overstepped, spoken out of turn, forgotten her place. Now came the consequences. Termination, maybe a bad reference, definitely a reminder of what happened when people like her tried to rise above their station. Thompson's office overlooked the production floor through floor-to-ceiling windows that made everything below seem small and manageable. Maya stood in front of his desk like a defendant awaiting sentencing, her hands clasped behind her back to hide their trembling. Sit down, Thompson said, his voice unreadable. Maya perched on the edge of the chair, ready to flee at the first sign of trouble. Thompson studied her for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds, his gray eyes evaluating her the way she evaluated engines, looking for weaknesses, strengths, potential problems. Yesterday you made me look like an idiot in front of my team. Maya's heart sank. Here it came, the lecture about knowing her place, about leaving complex problems to educated professionals, about the natural order of things in a world where degrees mattered more than ability. You also saved this company $27 million and probably my career. The unexpected turn left Maya speechless. I've been thinking about that all night, Thompson continued, leaning back in his leather chair. How does a cleaning woman diagnose a problem that 12 engineers with advanced degrees couldn't solve? Either you're a genius, or we're all idiots, or there's something fundamentally broken about how we approach problems. Maya found her voice. Maybe it's all 3. Thompson's laugh was bitter and genuine. Maybe it is. Tell me about your background. And don't give me the sanitized version from HR files. Tell me the real story. So Maya told him. About growing up in her father's garage, about learning that machines had personalities and problems that weren't always what they seemed. About acceptance letters she couldn't afford to accept, about dreams deferred but not abandoned, about working nights to pay for community college classes in mechanical engineering while cleaning floors for people who thought her invisible. You're taking engineering classes? Thompson's surprise was genuine. Advanced fluid dynamics this semester. Thermodynamics in the fall. I maintain a 4.0 GPA, but that's probably not relevant to my cleaning duties. The sarcasm was subtle but unmistakable. Thompson caught it and smiled, the first genuine expression Maya had seen from him. What would you say if I offered you an entry-level position in our engineering department? Maya's world tilted on its axis. I'd say you're either joking or you hit your head when the pressure valve exploded yesterday. I'm completely serious. Your diagnostic yesterday was better than anything my team produced. You have the educational foundation, the practical experience, and most importantly, you think differently than we do. That's exactly what we need. But Maya had learned not to trust gifts that seemed too good to be true. What's the catch? No catch. Starting salary is $48,000, full benefits, tuition reimbursement for completing your degree. You'd report directly to Chun, work on diagnostic and troubleshooting projects. Maya's mind raced through the mathematics of possibility. $48,000 was more than she and her father made combined. Tuition reimbursement meant finishing her degree without drowning in debt. Benefits meant security she'd never known. It also meant leaving behind the familiar world of invisible labor for the uncertain territory of being watched, evaluated, judged by people who'd already decided she didn't belong. I need to think about it, Maya said. Thompson nodded, understanding more than she'd expected. Take your time. But Maya? Yesterday you proved something important. Not just to me, but to yourself. Don't let fear rob you of what you've earned. That evening, Maya sat with her father in the garage. The Honda Civic they were rebuilding spread across the concrete floor like a mechanical autopsy. She told him about Thompson's offer, about the opportunity that felt too big and too dangerous and too perfect to be real. What are you afraid of, Mija? The question hit deeper than Maya expected. What was she afraid of? Failure? Success? Discovering that she really didn't belong in rooms full of people with impressive degrees and confident voices? I'm afraid of being the only one who looks like me, talks like me, thinks like me. I'm afraid of being the diversity hire who got lucky once and never lives up to expectations. I'm afraid of leaving you alone. Luis set down his socket wrench and looked at his daughter with eyes that had seen her fix her first engine at age 14, graduate as valedictorian despite working weekends, and solve problems that defeated experts. Elena and I came to this country with nothing but hope and stubborn determination. We worked jobs that hurt our backs and our pride, so you could have choices we never had. Yesterday, you proved that our sacrifice meant something. He paused, his voice thick with emotion Maya rarely heard. I'm not alone, Mija. I'm surrounded by the love of a daughter who inherited her mother's brilliance and her father's refusal to quit. Take the job. Show them what we already know, that Rodriguez women are forces of nature. Maya felt tears threaten, but they were the good kind. Tears that came from understanding that courage wasn't the absence of fear but the decision to act despite it. The next morning, Maya knocked on Thompson's office door wearing her father's lucky wrench on a chain around her neck and her mother's wedding ring on her right hand. She'd made her decision. I'll take the job, she said simply. Thompson smiled, but it was Chun who stepped forward with Maya's new employee badge and a handshake that felt like a promise. Welcome to the engineering team, Maya Rodriguez. 6 months later, Maya stood in front of the same broken machine that had changed her life, but now she wore a blue engineering polo instead of cleaning scrubs, and the 12 engineers around her were listening instead of ignoring. The problem was different, a software glitch that was causing quality control issues, but Maya's approach was the same: listen first, assume nothing, remember that machines and people weren't so different. The error pattern suggests user input inconsistency, she explained to the team that now included her as an equal. But I think we're looking at operator fatigue. The mistakes happen during shift changes, when people are either tired or unfamiliar with the system's quirks. Thompson, who'd become an unlikely mentor, nodded approvingly. Proposed solution? Better user interface design and more comprehensive training. Also, the machine should provide clearer feedback when operators make input errors. Prevention instead of correction. As the meeting dispersed, Maya caught her reflection in the office windows. She looked different now, confident in a way that came from being heard, respected in a way that had nothing to do with her background and everything to do with her ability to see solutions that others missed. Her father visited that afternoon, bringing lunch and pride that radiated from him like heat from a well-tuned engine. Luis Rodriguez wore his best shirt and the smile of a man whose daughter had proven that dreams deferred weren't dreams destroyed. The other engineers, he asked quietly, they treat you well? Maya thought about Chun, who'd become both colleague and friend. About Thompson, who'd swallowed his pride and learned to value insight over credentials. About the respect she'd earned not by changing who she was, but by finally having the courage to show it. They treat me like I belong, she said. Because I finally believe I do. That evening, in the garage that had taught her everything about fixing broken things, Maya worked beside her father on Mrs. Peterson's latest automotive disaster. But now their conversation was different. 2 engineers sharing insights, father and daughter building something together that neither could have created alone. You know what the best part is? Maya said, her hand steady as she adjusted a particularly stubborn carburetor. I'm not the first cleaning woman who knew more than she was allowed to show. I'm just the first one who got lucky enough to be heard. Luis smiled, understanding the weight of that truth. Maybe luck. Maybe you made your own opportunity by being ready when the moment came. Outside, the sun set over a city full of people working jobs that didn't reflect their potential, dreaming dreams that seemed too big for their circumstances, carrying knowledge that the world wasn't ready to recognize. But in one small garage, a father and daughter continued the work of fixing broken things, confident now that broken didn't mean worthless, and that sometimes the most elegant solutions came from the most unexpected sources. Maya Rodriguez had learned the most important lesson of all: expertise wasn't about where you studied or what degrees you earned. It was about listening carefully, thinking clearly, and having the courage to speak up when you knew the answer, even when the world insisted you should stay quiet. The machine hummed in perfect harmony now, its million-dollar precision restored by $20 in parts and a lifetime of learning to hear what others missed. And somewhere in that rhythm, Maya heard the sound of every barrier breaking, every assumption crumbling, every door opening for the next girl who dared to believe that knowledge could come from anywhere and genius wore many faces. In the end, it wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving herself right, and discovering that she'd been an engineer all along, just waiting for the world to catch up.